Hey, what's good, everybody? We're back with Drinks with Darren for the month of November 2023. And I've got a lot to discuss with you today. We're going to go over all of the stats for the areas. It's something we do on every video if you're a regular watcher of this. But I also just was fortunate enough to attend a presentation by the British Columbia Real Estate Association's chief economist on what he sees going on in the BC economy and some predictions about the future. Predictions more so around what's going to happen with real estate. It has obviously been an incredibly topsy-turvy time from the boom market of 2020 to the end of 2022 to the bust market of 2022 and then the boom of 2023, and now we may be in a bust market of 2023. Who knows what the heck is going on? Well, I'm going to show you some things today in this video that I think are going to help wrap our heads around where we might be headed. And if you're someone that is thinking of buying or selling or investing or just generally trying to figure out what to do when it comes to your real estate endeavors, this is really going to help you kind of formulate that. So as always in the Drinks with Darren video, you're here to join me for a drink. Angry Scotch Ale. So let's get into this and let's get into the video. So the presentation that I was able to attend with the chief economist from the British Columbia Real Estate Association, I'm going to refer to them as BCREA moving forward, was aptly titled Making Sense of the 2023 Economy and Housing Market. If you've never had an opportunity to see Brendan speak, he is probably the most entertaining economist that you're ever going to meet. And fortunately enough, he's actually going to be joining us on our YouTube video probably in early 2024 to give you, our audience, an entire rundown on what he sees going on. And this is going to be directly from his own words, not from mine, directly from him. But today I am going to make use of his slide presentation that he so graciously provided me with to give you some of the highlights of his presentation that I thought were worth bringing to your attention. The first thing I thought that was really interesting was how much money households in general have really accumulated over the last few years. He describes it as households accumulating a mountain of savings. You can see by this graph in 2020, as an example, almost $80 billion across Canada was saved. And while that number wasn't maintained at 80 billion, we are still well above 2019 levels in terms of how much money people are actually saving. Now, this could be for a variety of reasons, but Brendan goes on to say that the unemployment rate is really low and steady. There hasn't been a lot of change here. And this is also backed by an incredibly strong labor market. You can see by this graph on the left-hand side that job vacancies have been going down and down and down, and the prime age employment rate has been staying relatively flat. This, along with record immigration driving our population growth in Canada, has led to an interesting scenario economically. Introducing the BC Home Buyers Course, your ultimate guide to buying your first home with confidence and precision. With over 3 hours of comprehensive video content, you can learn at your own pace whenever and wherever you want. You can sign up by visiting bchomebuyers.90daysout.ca or checking the description in this video for more details. Probably the most interesting slide of his entire presentation was this. He goes on to say there is less interest rate sensitivity in the market. I was absolutely blown away to see the mortgage presence among homeowners in BC, with over 45% of people not having a mortgage at all. Now, this is from 2021, but this is interesting too. One of the reasons our market has remained so resilient is because over 90% of the people in British Columbia have been in their homes for at least 2 years, with over 54% living in their homes for 10 years or more. This, of course, means that they have built up a ton of equity in their properties. We still have a low supply, which is translating into a low turnover of housing stock in the province. But as you know, the rates have been impacting the growth of properties right now. And of course, I'm relating to home prices. They have been softening over the last little while. And that's kind of been the case from 2022 until present day, with a few spikes in between. Basically, from the start of 2022, this graph shows that when the Bank of Canada started tightening their interest rates in March of 2022, home sales just began to completely plummet. In early 2023, when the Bank of Canada made a pause on their rate hikes, we saw home sales start to rebound back up towards the historical averages. In the summer of 2023, when the Bank of Canada resumed tightening, we saw those sales start to dip again. This is just showing the impact of every time the Bank of Canada makes a decision, how it impacts the sales in our area. So are we going to experience more increases moving forward? Well, probably not. And let's hope that's the case, but check this out. This graph is showing the market probabilities of the estimations of future rate increases really happening or not. You can see in December of 2023, there was only a 10% probability of one more rate increase this year. By the spring and into the summer of next year, you're seeing a 54% probability of at least a quarter point rate cut. And the numbers keep improving from there. Fast forward to the spring of 2025, markets are predicting a 1.25 basis points rate cut by the middle of the year. Now, wouldn't that be lovely for any of you that have a mortgage renewal coming up or you are on a variable rate mortgage? So hopefully there is some good news for you on the horizon. This next graph shows what actually has happened with mortgage rates over the course of the last few years, but more specifically where the forecast is and also what the market expectations are moving into the end of 2025. The next thing I want to share with you before we get into the local stats is really how to fix this housing supply problem that we keep talking about. And let's keep this specific to British Columbia. This table is going to show you all of the things that have been introduced to try and curb buying homes, which is not the way to solve our problem. In 2010, you had a 20% down payment requirement for rental properties. In 2011, the maximum amortization period was shortened to 30 years. Some of you might not even remember this, but you used to be able to buy a home with zero down on a 40-year mortgage. Long gone are those days. The maximum amortization period was then shortened to 25 years in 2012. In 2016, the minimum down payment requirement was increased to 10% for the portion of prices between $500,000 and $1 million. Then in 2016, all insured mortgages were made to qualify at a posted 5-year mortgage rate, followed by the full remainder of the OSFI B20 stress test for uninsured mortgages beginning in 2018, which had an incredible impact on real estate prices right across the country. There was then in 2021 an increase in minimum qualifying rates for uninsured mortgages to 5.25%. That was more of the macro prudential type stuff or mortgage credit-y type stuff. Let's talk about tax policies over the last 10 years now. The BC foreign buyers tax was introduced in 2016. Also that year, the elimination of capital gains exemptions for non-residents was introduced. The city of Vancouver the following year then introduced a 1% tax on vacant homes, followed by the next year of the BC speculation and vacancy tax. Later that year, they increased the BC foreign buyers tax and expanded the BC foreign buyer tax to jurisdictions outside of Metro Vancouver. In 2019, a school tax on high-valued properties was introduced. In 2021, an underused housing tax was introduced. And into this year, there is now a federal anti-flipping tax, a provincial flipping tax on its way, and an outright foreign buyer ban right across the country from coast to coast. So holy smokes, we've tried to fix this housing shortage with policy and taxing people. Has it worked? The slide will tell you. Meanwhile, prices have doubled. Check out what happened shortly after the foreign buyers tax was introduced. The speculation tax had barely any impact, and then the market absolutely took off. The Bank of Canada rate increases did soften the market quite considerably. However, once the foreign buyer ban was actually put in place, prices again took off. Prices have doubled. Incredible. So what's the solution? Well, Brendan says, and you know this watching because you're smart, build more homes. Don't tax your way out of this problem. Build more homes. Check this out. In the late 1970s and into early 1980s, where you saw a dip in about 1985 for completions per capita in British Columbia, and this is completions for new homes in British Columbia. Between 1985 and 1990, you saw a 79% increase in the average price. This is because they stopped building more homes. This happened again in the late 90s. Between 2001 to 2006, you saw a 76% increase in the average price. Again, when new home completions per capita dipped considerably. And lastly, in 2011, to 2021, there was a 65% increase in the average price in BC simply because we were not building enough homes. So that's pretty interesting. I found that incredibly interesting. So if you don't subscribe to our YouTube channel, make sure you do, because you are not going to want to miss my sit down with Brendan discussing all of this with the most current data that's available when we have a chance to do it, likely in early November. So hopefully you learned something there. I found that all incredibly interesting. But what we're going to get into now is we're going to get into the local stats to see how your home is performing. Starting with condominiums in the Fraser Valley. Over the last 3 months, they are down 1.8%. However, in the last 12 months, they are still up about 3.8% based on last month's home price index. Jumping over to townhomes now, we've seen a slight decrease in townhomes over the last 3 months, down less than 1% at 0.6%. However, over the last 12 months, they're still up about 4.7%. So if you bought a condo or a townhome at least a year ago, you're still doing pretty good on it. Jumping into detached homes now, over the last 3 months, detached homes are down about 2.6% based on last month's home price index. However, are up 4.9% based over their performance over the last 12 months. Now, there's a lot of story of what's happened in those last 12 months. You saw a complete dip and then a complete skyrocket. So take that for what it is, but it certainly goes on just to prove that owning real estate is still always an incredible investment. So look, that's it for this episode of Drinks with Darren. I want to thank you guys for watching. I want to thank you for all of your support, all the introductions to your friends and family and coworkers that need our help. And we will definitely look forward to connecting with you again soon, if not on video, but hopefully in person. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.